Let's face it, the open world RPG genre is completely saturated. We get tons of them every year, and some are absolute masterpieces, while others are divisive to say the least. But why is that? Today, we're taking a scientific approach. We're going to look past the hype and understand exactly why you might adore one game but completely hate another, even though they look pretty similar at first glance. To do so, we're going deep into game design choices using this, a custom system of radar charts made by my team of brilliant scientists. We're going to break down 10 iconic titles through 5 core pillars. Each aspect will get a precise score, giving us a unique visual blueprint for every single game. This way, we can stack them up against each other, analyze the game design differences, and draw some real conclusions. Now, I'll do my best to stay as objective as possible. But of course, an analysis like this always have a little bit of personal bias. So, if you don't agree with some of my scores, that's completely fine. Just let me know in the comments below so we can debate about it. But before we drop our first game onto the chart, I need to show you what these 5 pillars actually mean. And to make it simple, let's choose a quick example with a game that has nothing to do with today's topic, Minecraft. First up, exploration. This isn't just about map size, it's about how you discover the world. We evaluate organic curiosity, verticality, freedom of movement, the rewards you get from exploring, and whether the game holds your hands with icons or lets you get lost. Here, Minecraft will score pretty high. Next, core gameplay. We're looking at enhanced feeling, combat responsiveness, movement fluidity, depth of the mechanics, and your overall freedom of approach in action. Here, Minecraft will score decent, but nothing amazing. Then we have narration and quests. This tracks the active storytelling, so the main plot, the cinematic direction, character development, and the writing quality of the side quests. Obviously, Minecraft will get about 0. But don't confuse that with our 4th pillar, lore and world building. This is about the passive storytelling, the depth of the mythology, the story of the world, and environmental storytelling. So how the world talks to you through its ruins and landscapes. And Minecraft could score pretty high here. And finally, progression, the classic RPG hook. We evaluate character builds, skill trees, loot variety, and that sweet feeling of going from a vulnerable nobody to an absolute god. And Minecraft is pretty mid here. Now that you know the rules, let's bring out our 10 contestants and see how they actually shape up. Let's kick things off with a game I personally adore, Zelda Breath of the Wild. When it comes to exploration, honestly, it just doesn't get any better than this. The map is a masterclass in game design, specifically crafted to pull you off the beaten path. You see a mountain peak, you naturally want to know what's behind it. You spot a strange glow in the distance, you have to check it out. And the game constantly rewards your curiosity. It could be a hidden shrine, a chest full of rupees, a stunning vista that opens up a whole new direction, or even a massive, entirely optional quest where you have to save a corrupted dragon. You can never stay focused on one single objective for more than 5 minutes. And that organic sense of wonder is just brilliant, always refusing to hold your hand. It earns a perfect 100. Now, for core gameplay, Breath of the Wild might seem just okay at first glance. You have basic weapon types, bows, stealth, and a standard parry and dodge mechanic. It's solid, but nothing groundbreaking on its own. However, the true genius lies in your freedom of approach. You can chug a stealth potion to sneak into a camp, use a leaf to blow monsters off a cliff, drop a metal box on them with magnesis, or literally your lightning onto their heads. And because your weapons shatter constantly, you're forced to improvise and use the environment. Plus, Link's movement feels incredible. He is fast, light, can climb literally anything, and glide from anywhere. The horse controls are just okay and a few mechanics lack precision. But the sheer creativity brings it to a very respectable 70. Moving on to narration. And this is arguably the game's biggest weakness, and why some players just couldn't get into it. The main quest is pretty simplistic, and lacking any real sense of urgency. It's not bad, but it is rarely memorable. And the side quests, aside from a few gems like the one with the Leviathan fossils, or the stealing of Kakariko's orb, Most are incredibly basic, often fetch this for me or go kill that group of enemy. But on the bright side, the cinematic memories scattered across the world are beautifully written and really emotional. But as a whole, the active storytelling takes a backseat, and the devs own that. So it sits at a 30. But lore and world building is a completely different story. Breath of the Wild excels at passive storytelling. The runes and landscapes speak volumes. You constantly stumble upon the scars of a past war, piecing together the sheer violence of what happened 100 years ago. And on top of that, there's a deep, ancient mythology filled with mysterious tribes and old spirits. It's a beautifully coherent, deeply intriguing world, earning an 85. And finally, progression. This is where the game steps away from traditional RPG mechanics. Because the game is designed to be beaten in any order, you don't get major item unlock progression like in other Zeldas. Sure, you upgrade your slate abilities, unlock champions' powers, gather stronger gear, and accumulate hearts and stamina. But there's no deep stat management and absolutely no class building. It is all about constant adaptation. So it gets a 30. So here's Zelda's rather short. We can clearly spot its strengths and weaknesses. But for now, let's not jump to conclusion, we'll see about that later on. Next up is The Witcher 3, which is practically the perfect antithesis to Zelda. Starting with exploration, and this is honestly where the game stumbles. Which is a shame because the map is gorgeous, packed with details, bustling cities, and intriguing landmarks. But the game constantly dictates your journey with a mini-map trail, a distant tracker, and a GPS marker. Side quests are heavily side-posted, leaving very little room for genuine, encrypted discovery. You can turn off the HUD, but since the game wasn't built for it, navigating organically just becomes frustrating. Stumbling upon a vibrant city or a creepy tomb is really cool, but it's not driven by true exploration. So it gets a 40. For core gameplay, it definitely offers more depth than Zelda. You have a classic parry and dodge, a wide array of steel and silver swords, crossbows, combat oils, and a very cool magic sign system. The catch? Half of the potions and signs feel completely situational or cluttered. But my biggest issue, and this is highly subjective, is the actual movement and combat feeling. Geralt feels incredibly heavy to pilot, and the controller responsiveness can feel clunky, which often broke my immersion. And don't even get me started on controlling Roach. It's a mechanically dense system, but the execution feels awkward, leaving it at a 40. But where The Witcher 3 is absolutely phenomenal is narration. This is CD Projekt Red at their absolute finest. The character relationships are deeply authentic and brilliantly written. You genuinely care about who lives and who dies. The cinematic direction is Hollywood tier. These devs truly know how to stage a scene. While a lot of credit goes to Andrzej Sapkowski's original books, the game execution elevates it perfectly. Even better, the side quests receive the same exact budget and writing care as the main story, sometimes even surpassing it. No suspense here, it's a flawless 100. That narrative excellence carries directly into lore and world building. The political intrigue between factions is completely believable, and the background writing is stunningly mature. And CD Projekt Red crafted a world that feels genuinely alive. The cities are massive and organically structured, and NPCs actually go about their daily routines. I'm giving it a 95 instead of 100, and you'll see exactly why later in the video. As for progression, we get a traditional RPG skill tree with multiple branches, stat, upgrades, and magic enhancement. It allows for a decent customization, but let's be honest, most of us just swing swords without obsessing over the microstats. The progression also suffers from that classic RPG trope where you trade a hard-earned level for some measly plus 1% fire resistance. You never feel arbitrarily locked of your playstyle at the start, making it a rock-solid 75. Let's stay with the same studio but pivot to a completely different universe, Cyberpunk 2077. For exploration, this is easily the game's weakest link. Yes, Night City is a breathtaking visual achievement, and driving around looking at the neon architecture is spectacular. But actual free exploration, pretty much non-existent. Every quest is neatly pinpointed on your GPS, fixers constantly call you on your phone to hand you jobs, and the random open world activities like hunting cybercycles can feel incredibly repetitive. Free exploration is rarely rewarded, making the open world feel more like a gorgeous movie backdrop, and it takes a hard hit at 30. On the flip side, the core gameplay goes incredibly hard. The combat system is deeply refined, featuring dozens of customizable weapons that cater to any playstyle. Gunplay and melee feel incredibly punchy and satisfying, and this movement is fast, fluid, and a blast to control. The sheer freedom of approach is fantastic. You can go gun blazing, opt for little stealth, or go full netrunner, manipulating the environment and firing enemy cyberware from across the room. It can feel a little overwhelming and messy at times, but still deserves an incredibly strong 80. In terms of narration, CD Projekt Red delivers high-tier storytelling once again. The main questline is an absolute gripping ride that constantly pushes you forward, backed with an incredible first-person cinematic immersion. The characters are really well written, both in the main story and the major companion arcs. But if I had to nitpick one thing, it's that the characters form deep bonds or life or death trust with you way too quickly. A common video game trope, I know, but it stands out here because the rest of the writing is so grounded. Still, it earns a great 85. When it comes to lore and world building, Night City has an unforgettable identity. The corporate grid, the threat of the cyber psychosis, the lore of the net, and the distinct cultural districts are meticulously constructed. It's a fantastic, coherent dystopian setting. However, it doesn't quite reach the mythic, multi-layered depth of the Witcher's universe, but still landing it at a very comfortable 75. And finally, progression is where Cyberpunk truly shines. It is the most mechanically deep system we've looked so far. First, you start by picking one of the 3 life paths, which adds a great flavor, but the real meat is in the character building. The attribute and perk trees are massive, allowing you to specialize so deeply that you become a terrifying god in your chosen field. Combine that with a custom cyberware implants like the Sade Stand to slow down time, and the progression loop feels incredibly rewarding from start to finish. A few minor start upgrades can feel uninspired, but overall it's a powerhouse. 95. Let's move to one of my personal guilty pleasures, Assassin's Creed Origins. I wasn't sure which one of the 4 modern RPG Assassin's Creed to pick, but I had to go with my absolute favorite. For exploration, Origins actually does remarkably well for a Ubisoft title. The map is drop-dead gorgeous, it completely transports you back to ancient Egypt. If you play with the default setting, it's heavily guided and filled with icons, but if you turn off the HUD, it becomes an absolute joy to navigate. Tumbling blindly upon the lighthouse of Alexandria, discovering a hidden gladiator arena, or fighting a massive albino crocodile in a place you were not expecting is amazing. And exploring historical tombs and pyramids gives a genuine sense of adventure. But of course, it was fundamentally designed around a GPS map, and you can feel it. So it gets a 60. In the gameplay department, I was incredibly surprised. We are light years away from the old, clunky counter-attack formula of the classic games. You pilot a highly agile assassin who can climb literally anything. And the combat offers a massive variety of weapon types, from curved swords and heavy maces to multiple bow archetypes. The parry and dodge combat system is demanding, not quite as Souls-like, but far deeper than your average action game. Plus, stealth offers a fantastic sandbox freedom, letting you use your eagle to scout, fire sleep darts, or unleash wild animals upon enemy camps. It gets a bit too easy on normal difficulty, and Nightmare mode can feel artificially cheap, but the core loop is incredibly satisfying. 75. As for narration, well, it's a Ubisoft game. The side quests are almost universally tedious, featuring copy-pasted NPCs giving you the exact same quest over and over again. The main story gets a lot of focus, and while Bayek himself is a seriously dope, deeply driven protagonist whose quest for vengeance you genuinely care about, and some moments really stand out like the serpent sequence or the endgame portion, the supporting cast is often poorly written with bizarre motivations. The cutscenes are also highly inconsistent, ranging from cinematic greatness to completely flat dialogue loops with zero cinematic flair. It's clearly not the game's strength, sailing at 40. Balancing lore and world building was tough. On one hand, the historical recreation of Ptolemaic Egypt is stunning. The world feels remarkably alive, and the blend of Egyptian, Greek, and Roman cultures is incredibly well researched. But at the end of the day, it's a recreation of real history, not an original fantasy mythos. And the Aisu sci-fi lore hidden in the tombs adds mystery, but it doesn't match the fictional depth of our top contenders, leaving it with an evocative 50. Finally, progression. And Origins surprised me here. It doesn't have the hyper-specific stat armor tracking of the later games. Your gear mostly just get higher numbers with minor perks, but the skill tree is a blast. You unlock genuinely game-changing abilities throughout your journey, and you never feel gatekept. Perks like taming wild predators or controlling your arrow in midair like a guided missiles are incredibly fun. You can specialize across the Hunter, Warrior, and Seer path, though you do end up becoming an overpowered master of all trades by the endgame. Some didn't like that, but I loved it. 80. Next up, let's look at Horizon Zero Dawn. For exploration, Horizon gets hit with a pretty heavy penalty. Yes, the post-apocalyptic world is visually stunning, blending overgrown nature with the rusted, majestic ruins of a past sci-fi civilization. But actually exploring it feels incredibly rigid and artificial. It's a very on-rails open world where you spend 90% of your time tracking glowing footprints with your focus scanner and moving from one icon to the next on your minimap. There's almost no room for genuine, unscripted discovery, and the world often feels like a beautiful corridor rather than a land of freedom. So it scores a low 25. Thankfully, the core gameplay salvages the entire experience. Fighting the mechanical beasts is an absolute blast, as you can't just mash buttons and hope for the best. You have to scan them, locate their individual weak points, tier specific components of their bodies with your bow to disable their weapons. It's tactical, fast-paced, and highly satisfying when you finally bring down a giant Thunderjaw after a long and tedious fight. Nah, the gameplay in this game is actually really good and underrated in my opinion. The only thing that is really mid is the human versus combat, which feels incredibly basic, repetitive and clunky, but the robot combat holds the game score strong at 70. In terms of narration, the game splits the difference. On one hand, the main mystery, discovering exactly how the world died, what the Zero Dawn project actually was, and uncovering Aloy's origins, is genuinely intriguing and keeps you hooked until the credit rolls. However, the quests themselves, and both the main and side quests, are mid as hell and drag the experience down. They suffer from an incredibly stiff cinematic direction, usually consisting of two lifeless character models staring blankly at each other while reciting dialogue with almost no unique camera work or emotion. Overall, pretty similar to AC Origins, so 40 seems good. But the lore and world building is where Horizon truly carves out its identity. The concept of the Pharaoh Plague, a rogue army of biomass-consuming robots that wiped out life on Earth, combined with the human society resetting into primitive, machine-worshipping tribes, is brilliant and really gripping. The world tells a tragic, fascinating story through its environmental design and earns a grade 75. Lastly, progression is very much on the light side of the RPG spectrum. The skill tree mostly unlock combat maneuver or basic quality of life perks, which sometimes feels like they've been scrapped out of your character from the start, rather than allowing you to shape a truly unique build. Your gear progression is also painfully linear. You're basically just saving up shards to buy the purple version of the same weapon you already own, just to get better mod slots. Let's be honest, it does the job. You at least have a real room for progression, but it lacks deep RPG customization, leaving it at a 60. And with Horizon, we are officially halfway through our list. 5 games done and 5 more to go. And trust me, the next half is packed with heavy hitters, including games I know many of you absolutely worship. But looking at the screen right now, we can already spot some massive disparities. We're starting to see how completely different philosophy in game design reshape these rather shorts. Some titles stretch heavily toward pure, mechanical gameplay, while others totally sacrifice progression just to give us a legendary narrative experience. It is really interesting to stack them up like this. But let's not jump to conclusion just yet. We're going to hold off on the deep breakdown analysis until the very end of the video. Once our dataset is fully complete, we will calculate the official average scores, sort these titles into distinct design categories, directly compare the anomalies, and finally crown the ultimate king of the open world RPG structure. So stay tuned, because the next 5 contestants are about to completely throw off the data. Let's jump straight into game number 6. And that brings us to Elden Ring. For exploration, let's not beat around the bush. This is the absolute pinnacle of modern game design. The map is breathtaking, and the game gives you 0 UI markers to guide you. Instead, it relies entirely on brilliant environmental level design. The world subtly pulls your eye toward landmarks. The massive earth tree, not so subtle I know, anchors your long-term goal. But on a micro level, every crumbling ruin or strange structure practically begs you to explore it. And you're always rewarded. Whether it's a hidden boss, rare loot, or even a massive, jaw-dropping underground civilization you stumbled into completely unprompted. My first time taking that elevator down into the Sophia River completely broke my brain. My only minor critique is that the optional minor catacombs and caves can feel a bit repetitive, both in design and bosses. But otherwise, it's a magnificent 95. For core gameplay, you already know where the score is going. This is one of the greatest combat systems ever put in a video game, and easily the sharpest on this list. Hitboxes are pixel perfect, the dodge and parry mechanics are incredibly precise, and the bosses are breathtaking, brutal tests of skill. The legacy dungeons like Stormveil Castle or Royal Lucaria are absolute masterclasses in layout design. On top of that, the mechanical variety of weapons, spells, and incantation is staggering. Whether you cowardly choose to keep your distance with powerful sorceries, or have the guts to get up close and personal with a colossal strength build, the tactile feedback is top notch. And personally, I mostly played an arcane and bleed build, so where would you put me? Anyways, it's flawless, undeniable 100. When it comes to narration, it's an absolute ghost town. But that is entirely by design. You have a vague objective at the start, and companion quests are entirely unguided. Miss a dialogue line, and an NPC might vanish across the map without a trace. There's no quest log and no straightforward narrative path outside of simply become Elden Lord. And side quests mostly happen naturally through your gameplay. Yes, the cutscenes look incredibly cool, but let's be honest, they more function as aura farming for bosses than traditional plot delivery. So yeah, narration is decentralized, cryptic, and I completely understand why it alienates some players. A flat 20 is honest here. But don't mistake a lack of plot for a lack of world. In terms of lore and world building, this is a masterclass. And it is no surprise given who co-created this universe, the GOAT himself, George R. R. Martin. Where active narration is low, the passive environmental storytelling is unmatched. Every shattered statue, ruined church, and cryptic item description holds a piece of a massive jigsaw puzzle. Learning about the history of the demigods, the outer gods, and any of the mysterious characters and events turns the player into a literal archaeologist. It's incredibly satisfying, earning a definitive 100. And to round it off, progression hits that exact same elite tier. Your starting class sets your baseline, but from there, customization is limitless. Balancing your stats between strength, dexterity, faith, intelligence, or arcane completely alters your toolset, each with distinct advantages. Your power scaling feels tangible as you upgrade your weapons, slot unique ashes of war, awaken great runes, and reinforce your sacred flasks. I believe it is the gold standard for RPG progression loops, at least for this roster of games. Another undeniable 100. Moving on to our 7th contestant, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. When it comes to exploration, this game drops you into a brutal, ultra-realistic medieval world. There's no magic, no fantasy creatures, just dense, beautifully authentic European forests and villages. It refuses to give you a magical GPS, forcing you to navigate by landmarks and roads. Stumbling upon a hidden camp or a quiet river feels incredibly immersive because the world feels like a real place. However, because it sticks so close to realism, traveling can sometimes feel a bit slow and tedious once you know the layouts. And there's not much actual reward after the few hours of discovery, landing it at a very solid 60. For core gameplay, KCD2 takes a highly deliberate, simulation-first approach. The combat uses a first-person directional store system where you have to meticulously choose exactly what to strike, block, and parry based on your opponent's stance. It's heavy, highly technical, and immensely rewarding in a tense tactical one-on-one duel. But let's be honest, the moment you get jumped by 3 bandits at once in a bush, it quickly becomes an awkward, clunky, and incredibly frustrating mess where the camera struggles and you get beaten to a pulp. And it is why for me, it sits at a lower 55. Purely a personal opinion, and I'm sure many really appreciated that aspect. But where the game truly starts to shine is narration. This is top-tier European RPG writing. The main quest is a gripping, mature historical drama, but it's the freedom within the quests that makes it great. If you need to get information from someone, you can get them drunk, blackmail them, steal their keys, or just beat them up. It's guided, but still leaves you free to progress in very different ways. The game treats you like an adult, and the characters feel incredibly grounded. It takes a well-deserved 80. That realism flows directly into lore and worldbuilding. The developers did a terrifying amount of historical research to recreate the 15th century Bohemia down to the absolute millimeter. The social structures, the religious tension of the era, the clothing, and the political conflicts are completely authentic. The world truly feels alive, and the in-game codex isn't just lore filler. It is basically a fully fleshed out history textbook. While it's not an invented fantasy mythos like Elden Ring, the sheer dedication to historical accuracy and cultural depth earns a fantastic 75. And finally, progression is a masterpiece. This is the absolute definition of the hardcore RPG hook. You start the game as Henry, an illiterate, clumsy blacksmith son. You literally cannot read. If you open a book, the letters crumble on the page. You can't aim a bow because your arms shake, and you run out of breath swinging a sword. To improve, you actually have to practice that specific skill in the world. Watching Henry organically grow from a total peasant to a legendary knight is one of the most rewarding loops in gaming. You really feel the difference in your abilities throughout the game. 90. Let's move on to Ghost of Tsushima. When it comes to exploration, this game starts with a brilliant premise. Instead of cluttering your screen with ugly compass lines and mini-maps, it introduces the guiding wind. You swipe the touchpad and the wind blows across the landscape to show you where to go. Golden birds lead you to hidden locations, and foxes guide you to shrines. At first, it feels like a magical, minimalist masterclass in immersion. But here's the catch. Once the honeymoon phase wears off after a few hours, the illusion completely shatters. You quickly realize that every single discovery follows a rigid, repetitive checklist. Follow a fox for the 20th time, sit in a hot spring, slash a bamboo strike, repeat over and over again. The breathtaking panoramas and gorgeous lighting almost act as a reward on their own, but the actual loop of discovery gets incredibly predictable and formulaic. It's a beautiful world to look at, but mechanically, the exploration dries up fast, landing it at a flat 60. For core gameplay, the sword fighting feels spectacular. The game perfectly captures the cinematic, rather sharp feel of all samurai films. Parries are punchy, dodges are fluid, and chopping through a Mongol camps feel incredibly satisfying. The downside, the system is a bit of a mechanical formula. You encounter a shield enemy, you switch to water stance. You see a spear enemy, you switch to wind stance. And once you memorize the rock, paper, scissors pattern, it can become quite repetitive. But the sheer execution and crisp animations keep it at a very solid 75. As for narration, the main storyline is a compelling, emotional tale about Jin Sakai being forced to sacrifice his samurai honor to save his people. Now, let's be honest, while the plot is definitely engaging and keeps you hooked, it's also really traditional and follows a very predictable paint-by-numbers revenge arc. It's not masterclass rating, but it absolutely does the job. And honestly, the cinematic presentation makes it feel superior to most generic open-world stories out there. Unfortunately, the side quests heavily drag the overall experience down. Almost all of them follow the exact same repetitive formula. Talk to a peasant, follow blueprints underground for 2 minutes, and kill a group of bandits. It's a fun narrative, but held back by its structural flaws. Still, it sits at 70. No, lore and world building takes a massive hit here. Don't get me wrong, the game is an absolutely gorgeous romanticization of feudal Japan, and it nails the atmosphere perfectly. But it's an aesthetic backdrop, not a deep, constructed fictional mythos. There are no ancient gods, complex political factions, or hidden world secrets to discover. What you see is what you get. It's beautiful, but shallow under the surface compared to a true fantasy lore. I'm going for 30. And finally, progression, and I'm telling you it won't score high. And yes, I know it looks like an RPG on the surface, with its skill trees and armor upgrades, but let's be real, it's an illusion. You're not building a unique character here, you're just unlocking a linear checklist. You collect bamboo to make your sword hit harder, and you upgrade your armor to get passive percentage buffs. Whether you wear the samurai plates or the stealth outfit, your core mechanics remain equal. By the end of the game, you will have unlocked every single perk anyway, turning Jin into an omnipotent Swiss Army knife. It completely lacks the specialized addictive build variety of a true RPG and gets a brutal 30. Our ninth contestant is none other than Red Dead Redemption 2. When it comes to exploration, this world is a mind-blowing achievement in environmental design. The level of detail is simply unmatched. For example, the animal AI behaves like a real ecosystem, and the towns feel genuinely alive with NPCs who follow actual daily routines. Traveling through this breathtaking scenery feels incredible, but it comes with a massive catch. For a world this realistic, it is incredibly frustrating that the map is constantly cluttered with icons telling you exactly where the interesting points are. Like, you want these encounters to happen completely naturally, but the UI keeps spoiling the surprise. And then there's traversal. Moving Arthur on foot feels like piloting a sluggish, heavy 30-ton truck, and traveling by horse is almost worse, as cross-map journeys take absolute ages, and the horse controls feel clunky and unresponsive, turning long rides into tedious chores rather than a fun adventure. It's a spectacular setting, but flawed in its delivery, leaving it at an 80. The sluggishness directly influences the core gameplay. As we said, the movement is clunky and can be really annoying sometimes, but otherwise, the combat loop itself is an absolute blast. The gunfights feel incredibly visceral, punchy, and satisfying, mostly thanks to the fantastical ragdoll physics and the cinematic slow-motion dead-eye mechanic. Technically, the game gives you a massive sandbox of tools to handle conflicts. You have the lasso, dynamites, axes, bows, and a dozen of firearms. But here's the game design failure. There is almost zero incentive to experiment. Using stealth, the lasso, or a bow takes too much time, puts you at massive risk, and gives you absolutely no extra reward. So what happens? You end up just using your revolvers or rifle for 80 hours because it's objectively the strongest and most efficient option. It's a shame to have so many cool mechanics under the hood when the game balance pushes you to play the exact same way every single time, which drops the score to a 70. But narration is where the game cements itself as an absolute titan. The tragic downfall of Dutch's gang and Arthur Morgan's journey toward redemption is one of the greatest stories ever told. The character writing is flawless, the performances are raw, and the emotional payoff is unforgettable. The only flaw is how rigid the mission structures are. If you step 2 feet away from the script, it's an instant game over. But purely for the story and the sheer emotional impact, it secures a massive 95. That narrative depth carries over directly into lore and world building. The internal logic and credibility of this universe are outstanding. Rival gangs don't just exist to be shot. They have fully fleshed out histories, territories, and deep-rooted vendettas that you discover throughout the world. The attention to detail is borderline psychotic. You can spend hours reading Arthur's unwritten journal sketches, watch towns physically construct new buildings as the story chapters progress, or uncover deeply buried mysteries like hidden serial killer trails, ghost trains, and bizarre Easter eggs. The world is so authentic, it feels less like a game setting and more like a time machine, earning another magnificent 95. And then we get to progression. And the radar chart absolutely collapses here. Why? Because it's simply not an RPG. There's a bit of progression as your life and stamina cores level up slightly, and you can buy pretty holsters or slightly stronger guns, but there are absolutely zero builds, zero skill trees, and zero gameplay personalization. You play Arthur exactly the same way from hour 1 to hour 80. It's a pure simulation mechanic, not an RPG progression loop, resulting in a brutal 20. And finally, we close the loop with the grandfather of the modern open-world RPG, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. When it comes to exploration, this game set a massive standard all the way back in 2011. Sure, it does have quest markers, but they are incredibly lightweight, non-intrusive, and very easy to ignore if you want to. Instead, the world relies on a brilliant pull mechanic. You start walking toward a town, a vague silhouette of a Nordic ruin appears on the horizon, or a cave icon subtly pops up on your compass, so you decide to peek inside, and 3 hours later, you've stumbled into a massive underground civilization, fought a legendary warlord, and completely forgotten what your original objective even was. It's a world that constantly begs you to change path and rewards you for it, maintaining a solid 85. For core gameplay, Skyrim definitely shows its age. Melee combat is notoriously basic. It feels flat, floaty, and lacks physical weight, almost like swinging a sword through a wet mattress with no real feedback. But let's be fair, there's nothing fundamentally broken or terrible about it. It's just old. And to be honest, playing as a stealth archer or using the dual-wielding magic system to freeze your enemies or cast illusions is still incredibly fun and deeply satisfying to handle. It values variety over technical precision, making a 40 feels like a perfectly fair spot for it today. In terms of narration, the game is a bit of a mixed bag. The main storyline, the whole Dragonborn prophecy and saving the world from Alduin, is honestly pretty generic, flat, and completely lacks any real dramatic tension. The political civil war plotline also ends up feeling a bit anticlimactic. But where the writing actually shines, though, is in the localized faction storylines. It introduces fantastic narrative setups and highly memorable quests. But when you look at the overall main quest structure, the lack of cutscenes, the voice acting repetition, and the absolute lack of complex, grey moral choices, the active storytelling definitely takes a backseat compared to a game like The Witcher 3, for example, but still landing it at 40. But lore and worldbuilding is where Bethesda truly flexes its muscle. The universe of Tamriel is gargantuan and multi-layered. You can walk into almost any house, dungeon or castle, pick up a physical book from a dusty shelf, and read actual multi-page histories about ancient wars, religious mythologies, or past political empires. The world feels deeply ancient, packed with distinct cultural histories for every race, and completely coherent in its background design, securing an easy 80. And to wrap it up, progression is legendary. Skyrim popularized the brilliant philosophy of you are what you play. The skill trees are massive. Every single discipline has its own dedicated constellation of perks, and at high levels, the customization becomes insane. You're not just picking minor passive buffs, you are unlocking completely distinct playstyles. You can specialize so deeply into magic that you become a master of illusion, forcing entire groups of enemies to fight each other while you just stand back. Or you can go full assassin, combining high-level sneak perks with 100 multipliers to literally one-shot dragons from behind. Or you can even forge your own custom enchanted daedric gear to turn yourself into an unstoppable, heavy armored battle mage. The freedom to build exactly the character you want without being locked into a predefined class is widely addictive, earning a massive 95. Now that all our 10 contestants are up on the board, I need to clear something up about the scoring. You probably noticed that some games got a 95 in aspects where they felt absolutely incredible, but why not a perfect 100? Well, to keep this project meaningful and avoid score inflation, I decided that only one game per pillar can earn a perfect 100 to really highlight the best one. And as we break things down, you'll see that this specific rule heavily influences which game manage to pull ahead and which ones get capped right at the finish line. But looking beyond raw numbers, the real magic of this project is how these games naturally categorize themselves. If we map them onto a Venn diagram, the structural philosophies of the studios become crystal clear. In our first category, we have the explorers. This design philosophy focuses mainly on organic curiosity, on throwing you off the beaten path. These games don't care if the active narration is low, their world is the hook. In the second circle, we have the storytellers. They sacrifice deep RPG mechanics or open world freedom to funnel all their energy into a massive narrative focus, Hollywood tier writing, heavy lore, and deep characters attachments. And in our third circle, we have the role players. Their core loop is entirely driven by character growth, massive skill trees, deep stat customization, and truly shaping your own specific build and role within the world. But of course, these categories are not hermetic at all. Even for the games right in the center of the circles, the lines blur. And for the rest of our roster, they live right in the intersections. Some are average generalists, while others are highly versatile across different categories. They bridge the gaps between the three core philosophies. Let's go back to the numbers for a second. By taking the average scores of each game across all 5 pillars, our mathematical ranking shapes up like this. By a massive landslide, Elden Ring takes the crown at 83. It's the only game that managed to hold 3 perfect 100 scores in our system, making it mathematically unstoppable. But let's be completely honest for a second. This leaderboard is just the logical, cold result of my analytical matrix, which can feel unfair or imprecise by the way it works. I did my absolute best to look past my own nostalgia and stay as objective as possible. But game design is art, and art is entirely subjective. No math equation can perfectly capture the exact feeling a game gives you when it strikes the perfect chord. On the flip side, Ghost of Tsushima closes the march at the very bottom with a 53. But listen to me carefully. If your favorite game scored low on this table, it absolutely does not mean it's a bad game. It simply means that our system, by its very functioning, violently punishes games that completely neglect core pillars like narration or RPG progression. A game can be a visual masterpiece and an incredible experience while still getting crushed by a cold mathematical matrix. So, knowing how the data voted, if I throw the math out the window and give you my purely personal, biased and emotional ranking of these games, it would look exactly like this. And just by looking at this final personal list, you can probably guess exactly what pillars are prioritized when I pick up a controller. But the beauty of the open world genre is that there is no single right answer. Whether a game focuses on a flawless mechanical engine, a massive historical simulation, or a linear cinematic script, it's ultimately up to each player to find the experience that speaks directly to them. Because at the end of the day, scores don't matter if a game manages to touch your soul. Anyway, thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this video. I truly hope you enjoyed this video on the whole radar chart concept. And I know I'm repeating myself, but even though I tried my absolute best to stay objective throughout this entire analysis, it is obviously still heavily biased on my own personal tastes. But honestly, that's the beautiful part of gaming. We all value different things, and that's why I really want to encourage you to drop your own opinions down in the comments. Let me know what scores you would have given these games and how your own radar charts would look. Also, if you love this analytical format, I actually made a video just like this one, where I used the exact same concept to break down survival games, using completely different design pillars of course. So feel free to go check that out, the link is on the screen right now and in the description. Let me know in the comments what type of games you want to see me tackle for the next video. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.